Is there such a thing as a 360-day prophetic year? This is the PL-89 calendar, and hopefully one day I'll find out. One day we'll find out. Maybe. This calendar is meant to solve questions, answer questions, solve problems, that being one of them, and many other questions, in a systematic, methodical, time, over a period of time, and to hold the questions in the crucible of this number matrix. And over time, as more gematria is added to the equation, then more information becomes connected and associated, becomes available because of the connections. That's the basic purpose of the PL-89 gematriatic quantum thought calendar. That's what this is. The basis of this calendar, the basis of the numbers and the formation of its rows and its columns, and the way it's used is based on verses in the Bible, specifically in the Old Testament, the Tanakh. And it's meant to shed light on many things, like I said earlier. It's a lunar and solar calendar. I've included the Islamic calendar recently, and it's a Daf Yomi calendar. Daf Yomi is the practice of learning a page of Talmud every day, and there are around 2,711 pages. I believe that's the exact number, but I say around there because in case I'm off by one or two. That's 2,711 pages. If you learn a page a day, it completes the whole Talmud in 7.5 years. And it started in 1923, which is very interesting, because 1923, from what I understand, from what I've been reading, is when Greece adopted the Julian calendar. And you can always fact check that. Last time I checked, Greece, it was one of the last countries, if not the last country, to adopt the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that we have today. So this is an ongoing quandary and topic of investigation for me. Is it a coincidence that the Daf Yomi started the same year that the very last country, or the last major country, adopted the calendar that we have today? Is there a connection between those two? And that's also part of what this is meant to address. But let's describe the basic format of it. Basically, it's the Hebrew calendar that we use today. On the Hebrew calendar, it's the 7th day of Tishrei. 7th day of this new year, this new Hebrew year of 5786. And it's a solar calendar, which is basically the Julian calendar, 365-day year, 65 and a quarter something days, but 65 days, 365 days. And today it's September 29th. And these numbers on this calendar, this is the box 1 in the top. The far left, top left corner is A1, and then the next is B1, C1, like that. It also functions as a table for the 72 names of God, which are derived from verses in the book of Exodus concerning the splitting of the sea at the time of the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt. And if you take the 3 verses in that passage, when the Egyptians were chasing them, and the angel of the Lord and the pillar of cloud came from in front of the camp and stood behind them, and stood between them and the Egyptians, and they served as, it seems like from the verses, like a buffer zone. Like as the Egyptians were chasing them, they were not able to come in contact with them all night. So you can look that up in Exodus chapter 14, verses 19 through 21. And so after that, after the chase was happening and they approached the sea, Moses lifted his hand and raised his staff, and God split the sea. They went in, the Egyptians went in, and it's hard to really describe how it all technically happened, but basically the water turned to dry land for the Israelites. They left, and then it covered the Egyptians, is what the verses say. It stopped, actually the verses stop at, it became to dry land. Something that Lacharava became to dry land. So this is obviously, needless to say, although I'm going to say it, it's a miraculous supernatural event. And those who analyze and interpret the Torah at a more esoteric level have understood there's different methods of analyzing the Torah through various arrangements of the letters and the verses. And in this particular arrangement, it's 3 verses. One verse is read forward, the second verse is read in reverse, and the third verse is forward again. And the 3 letters that start each verse, the first verse, the middle verse, and the last verse, form a word. And these words, sometimes they're actual, they mean things in Hebrew, and sometimes they don't have much meaning at all, or at least not that we know, or not actual words. Like the word, the very first name is Vav He Vav. And so, as far as I know, that's not a real Hebrew word. I mean, it's not although one of them is, I think, the 37th or the 36th, or one of them around there, is Aleph Nun Yud. So in Hebrew, the word Ani means I, or I am. Ani. And it's actually one of the names as well. And some of them, there are 3-letter words that just happen to be words in Hebrew. There's one that's the same sound as a Middle Eastern meditation. One of the names, it's either the 30, it's up there, it's right in the middle there too, it might be the the 40th maybe, it's the 35th, 36th. One of them is called Om. Aleph Vav Mem, but in Middle Eastern meditation, Om is like a sound for meditation. So that's one of the names as well, which is interesting. But anyway, the 72 names can fit in this calendar exactly because they're rows of 8. I mean, they're columns of 8, columns, 8 columns, and rows of 9. So 8 times 9 is 72, and that's how the name is conveyed in any of the texts that you would read it, whether it's the Zohar or Raziel Hamalach or any of these other esoteric texts. And so I had no idea about the 72-letter name. In fact, I was sort of leery of it. I was kind of afraid to get involved in it. It seemed like it was, it just seemed there's too deep waters, too much deep waters for me. And I stayed away from it, but over time I became, I'll say I was invited to study it. I just say it in my nice way of saying it. I was called to study it, and I felt the call, and I felt the interest in it. I no longer felt the fear to get involved with it. And so after that, I realized that the calendar going this way, which was how I started it, is the same going this way. It's the same thing. And so it worked out really well. So I could use it for my studies in the 72 names, and I can also use it for the studies of the time and the calendars. Didn't have to make a new chart for it. So today on the solar calendar, since the Hebrew is that we're in a Hebrew mode, we're in Hebrew domination right now, or domination, I don't know if that's a good word, domain or Hebrew authority right now. Because after Rosh Hashanah, which is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, you enter into the Jewish domain or Jewish authority. The same thing with Nisan. When you enter into Nisan, for obvious reasons, it says in Exodus, this is the month for you, head of months. Nisan and Tishrei enter the Jewish domain for 3 months, which this is 3 months. It stays in that modality, and then in the times, the periods, Tekufa it's called in Hebrew, and the period seasons, which is 3 months of Tammuz, it goes to the sun, or the solar, the non-Jewish domain. The non-Jewish authority is ruling the summer, very simply, because it's longer days. The sun has obvious rulership there. And also because the temple was destroyed in the summer, and it was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. And so you can see that the non-Jewish had a little bit more power than the moon. The Jewish people were weaker at the time, and so that's why in Chodesh, in Tekuvas Tammuz, it goes into the sun, and then also in Tekuvas Teves too. The Babylonians surrounded the city of Jerusalem, or the temple, I forgot which now, but in the month of Tevet, and Tevet was also the time that Esther, the beauty pageant, or the contest of the beautiful young virgins for King Ahasuerus, the Purim story, and Esther was brought in there. So that was sort of a darker period, I guess, for, even though she ultimately got into power because of it, but still, it was kind of a darker time. I'm sure she didn't really want to do it, but she kind of had to, I suppose, for the Purim salvation story, but it was kind of a darker time, it seems like to me. But anyway, Tevet and Tammuz are on the sun, which is the non-Jewish side, and the moon is the Nisan and Tishrei. But anyway, today on the moon, today is the 7th day of Tishrei, and the box number is 9, which is really amazing that it's 9. I didn't realize how significant it is that today, Dafka today, that it's 9. The coordinates for 9 are C9. C9 is 9. C is 9 is 9. So C9. When you get to C9, then you can see 9. Okay, I was going to give the rule of 40, but I usually say the rule of 40 if you've watched my videos, so I'll skip the rule of 40 for now, because I also employ English gematria. I'll explain that. It's a way of, people think that, I don't know, at least in my circles, they think that Hebrew gematria is the only real gematria. It's the only really authoritative gematria. But I have seen some amazing results and connections from English gematria. English gematria, when I say that, I basically mean that you use the English alphabet ordinally, A through Z, 1 through 26. So that cipher works very simply, that A is 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, D equals 4, E equals 5, etc. all the way up until Z, which equals 26. So if you use that cipher, there's some amazing connections in the English language that you can find, that it's really hard to believe that a human being did that. It's hard to, just one example, like the word for key, if you apply the English gematria, K-E-Y, K is the 11th letter, E is the 5th letter, and Y is the 25th letter. If you add it together, it's 41. 11 plus 5 plus 25 is 41. But the word for lock, L is the 12th letter, O is the 15th letter, C is the 3rd letter, and K is the 11th letter. If you add 12 and 15 and 3 and 11, you get 41. And everyone knows the connection between lock and a key. But not everyone knows that alphabetically in gematria they have the exact same number. Now, the skeptic will say, very nice, you found something that matches, but I can find you a bunch of things that don't match. And to that I'll say, true. But do you know why they don't match? There's other examples, and I've went through them before. I can bring many matches. Why equals because. Like the question, for what reason, why equals 56, because equals 56, and many, many others. And there are some that don't match, but there's some that don't match for reasons. Because if they were a different number and they matched, then it would affect all the other words. It's like a puzzle that has to fit in right. Some opposites don't match because they need to be a certain number for others. And I went through that before. I can't remember exactly right now, but sometimes they match, but they match like in reverse. Like for example, hot and cold is like 34 and 43. But anyway, all that to say is that I do a combination of English and Hebrew gematria. So getting back to why is today 9? Why is it 9 today? Today is the 7th day of Tishrei, and I was exploring the idea of the 360-day year. So yesterday was the first day of the new year, right? We celebrated Rosh Hashanah like a week ago, 6 days ago, but that was a 355-day year. So lunar, 354. This year happened to have been 355 because it was a full month of Malay. Sometimes it's an extra day in Cheshvan 30. Sometimes it only has 29 days. This past year it was full. So a 360-day year yesterday was the first day of the new year. And I pointed out that on this calendar, the first day of the new year was box number 1. So, and on the other, that was in the lunar, but in the solar, it was box 13. And anyone who knows gematria, the very basic level, is that echad, the Hebrew word for 1, has a numerical value of 13. So how interesting is it that we were on box number 13 on the solar, and we were on box number 1 on the lunar on the day that we started on the 360-day year. Now, these are connections. These are observations that you're finding. You're pointing out things, and I'm well aware of that. The idea that you can find connections in just about everything, and any point you want to prove, you can find connections to prove that point. So I'm just making the connections without openly stating any particular point that I'm trying to prove. Maybe I'm not trying to prove anything. Maybe I'm just only finding connections, not trying to prove something. And maybe that thing that I would be trying to prove will become apparent after so many connections are brought forth. Like there was this fake rapture thing that happened the other day, recently, right? If you've seen it in the media, and so there was this guy who he was like the rapture was supposed to be on September 23rd. So then he was in his class, and that was his 23rd birthday. Like this was before it happened, and then he started going to the blackboard, and then he started writing something, and then everyone left the classroom. They didn't want to see what he did. So it was like he got raptured. Like that's the idea that you get lifted up and everyone else disappears around you. He says this is what happened. It's my 23rd birthday, and everyone else disappeared. I mean that's really an amazing sign. That's really an amazing sign, I think. But it's still just a connection, and we see it didn't happen. The rapture didn't happen. So how is it that he gets this sign, which is it's really pretty good. I mean, if I saw something like that, I would definitely consider it. But no rapture happened. So, but maybe the rapture did happen. Who knows? I mean, who knows why these things happen? I mean, you think about the Charlie Kirk thing happening within one Julian calendar week. It was 13 days, September 10th, and then 13 days later was this fake rapture thing. I see the connection between it. And the 13 days happens to be the difference between the Gregorian date and the Julian date, which I also at times focus more on than other times. But anyway, Nine, in English gematria, 9 has a numerical value of 42. Like if you do 9, n plus I plus n plus e. N is the 14th letter, 9 is the 9th letter, n is the 14th, e is the 5. Add that together, it's 42. And that is amazing because today there's a counting of, if you read in the book of Numbers, in the Torah, Sefer Bamidbar, it recounts the 42 journeys of the Israelites in the wilderness, and for a while I had been studying them and going through them one per day, and that makes 42 days. But 42 is a big number in many respects. It's also in the New Testament. There's 42 days, 42 months in the wilderness, a 3.5-year period. But I'm finding out now that it could have a connection to the 42 journeys in the wilderness also. But it was 42. It was 40 years, but it's 42 journeys. And so there's 42 months in the desert. So there's a connection there. You can see that. So I was studying them and going through them, and for the past few years now, 3 years, more, 5 years, studying these 42 journeys. And just today, I somehow clicked back into it, and today became the first journey of the first day of the new journey, 43rd day, which is the first day of the next journey. And 42 is the box number, is 9 is 42 in today's box. So it's a very interesting connection. And so again, it could be like the rapture guy, I'm just finding connections and so what. But, based on our intelligence level, this is how for me, I can make sense of things. Is by seeing this number equals this thing equals that thing. Where does it bring us to? I'm not exactly sure yet, but it's interesting. If someone finds it interesting, I'd be happy to hear from you. It's also 21. 21 on the Gregorian calendar, which is the 29th day of September. And 21 is, of course, half of 42, but 21 is 21 there's many gematria ciphers. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with a cipher called Avgad. And Avgad is basically where Aleph becomes, 1 gets a value of 2 instead of 1, and 2 gets a value of 3 instead of 2. It's like you move the whole alphabet just one place over. People do that with they take a word and they'll in order to encrypt it, they'll put the letters that are before it, and then that word will be the word that represents the other word. So in that, it's called Avgad. In Avgad, the word Sukkot, which is the next journey after Ramses in the 42 journeys, is equal to 101. But in the PL-89, 21 equals 101. It's a long thing called the rule of 40. I didn't explain it this time, but 21 equals 61 equals 101 also. So Sukkot, and I was invited somewhere for Sukkot today. And so that's very interesting. I was invited somewhere on Sukkot when the Avgad is Sukkot. So that's pretty amazing too. So those are the basically the connections for today, for September 29th, and for 7th Tishrei. The Daf Yomi is the Vachim 15, and it's the 15th event. The event is also a whole series of countings. I didn't mention it, but an event basically is 21 days. Okay? And we finished the second event today. So it's 42, and an event is 21 days. It's a good thing I remember that. An event is 21 days. An event is also 1 day. This is what makes it so interesting, is that when you calculate the event, you're basically working with a day. An event is also every 3 days. An event is also a week. An event is 3 weeks, 21 days. And an event can also be 3 events. It's also still just an event. And so it happens to be that the events started, it's called, the concept is a concept called zeroth. Like there's the first, the second, and the third. And there's a concept in mathematics called the zeroth. The zeroth is that you're counting 0 as the first place marker. It's like it's not the first thing. It's like 0th thing, and then there's the first thing. So the 0th event was on Tisha B'Av this year, and for several reasons, but just two that are main reasons basically. It says Mashiach was born on Tisha B'Av, so that's like ground zero for this calculator. But Zeroth, the Mashiach was born on Tisha B'Av, and also it's in some kind of it's some kind of thing. It's a definition of there's like no chance of it happening. It's a zeroth chance, so it's like there's no chance of the Messiah coming. Zeroth, that means it's just the opposite is true. It means like 100%. It's a zeroth. There's no way it can happen. So when you say it's no way it can happen, then the forces of antagony have to make it happen. It's like my quirky kind of way so it's a zero. So ground zero is like saying you're never going to come. You're never going to happen. And then it has to contradict you because you can, as a human being, you can't be right. You know what I'm saying? No flesh will glory before God. So if you tell them it's never going to be Messiah, it's never going to happen, then it has to happen. So that's the zeroth idea. But also the zeroth day in the event, the zeroth event was Tisha B'Av this year, and the first event was the 10th of Av. It's the day that it's after the temple stopped burning. All right. And so I think that's it for today. We went pretty long on this one.